So welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining today's medical education workshop. Today's topic is designing a research study. I'm going to give you an introduction of the research. Again, if we believe that we could cover everything in 15 minutes, are too ambitious, but we'll try our best to cover quantitative research methodology, qualitative and mixed method research methodologies. We'll also do exercise on how to write a research statement, problem statement, and research questions. Okay, and today's session is just the beginning of our relationship as a researcher. So we'll learn more about the research as we meet together and discuss and do the project together. So if you need any assistance or questions, please contact me. Without further ado, let's talk about the topic. So here are our learning objectives. Identify research methodologies and methods and write a purpose statement and questions. So let's start with why behind a research study and then what. Before you consider conducting a research, you should think about why you are conducting a research study. For example, if you want to test hypothesis on effectiveness of educational intervention, you can consider an experiment or survey study design. Or if you are interested in understanding the learning culture at SIU School of Medicine, employees or learners or faculty will want to conduct a case study or ethnography. Such study will help you better understand the people, context, and the culture through observation, interviews, and document analysis. Please know that not all research purposes and approaches are listed here, but I believe that some of those purposes will resonate with you. And at any point, if you have any question, please let me know. And I will stop and we'll discuss. So Library 2013 defines the research design as shown on the slide. I'll read it to you, but let's reflect on it. So does the definition resonate with you? What is helpful? You can put your opinion on the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak up.
I think to me, the thing that stands out is like the very last piece, like ensuring you will effectively address the research problem. Is like there's so many different, designs and different approaches that you have to take the time to figure out like the most effective approach.
Right. Any other comments? To me, I like the notion of integration of research design components because I want readers, my audience, to see the purpose and the process of my research are aligned and logically connected. I hope this definition helps you and gives you an overview of what the research, rough understanding of what the research design should be. So what should we integrate and align in our research design? You see these 25 research elements here, from the starting of the research problem to the write-up of your research. I'll give you a moment to go through the 25 elements, which is not comprehensive. It's helpful. But there are so many components in research design. It's not just a method section of your journal article or study that you're working on. It includes literature review, purpose, research questions, even research politics. The researcher and the people around the researcher, the institution, audiences, data collection analysis, thinking about the implications of the study, what are the limitations, what are future research suggestions. So we have to think about all these. Does anyone want to share which one of these elements is the most important to design of your study that you're thinking? Feel free to put your idea in the chat. Speak up.
I think for me, what stands out, they're all essential, but I think the problem, ethical considerations, data verification, and then research politics, those kind of jumped out at me because the whole point of the research is the problem, whatever you're seeking to research. And then you also have to be ethical while you're doing it. But then if your data, it has to be verified. If it can't be verified, or if it can't be, conclusions can't be drawn from it, or it can't be applied elsewhere, it's somewhat of less value then. But then the research politics matter too. So I think it's the problem's important, but then doing research in an ethical, effective, safe way that allows it to be extrapolated and applied elsewhere is critical.
Thanks for sharing. Any other comments? I'll move on to the next one. So consider these 25 elements or more even before you start thinking about your research design, and consult with experts or faculty member or colleagues to talk about these elements beforehand, because many of the time researchers just jump into the research method, they start a research, and then later on they realize that, oh, they haven't really thought about the former things that they have to consider. And then it may be too late to revert and fix the problem, or may waste a lot of time to fix the problem. So if you have any question about research design, and please contact me or medical education faculty members so that you can streamline your research design. In social science and educational research, there are three major research methodologies, such as quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research. Understanding these different types of methodologies will help us write a research problem statement, research questions, and make decisions on research method considerations. So why don't we start with quantitative research design? Okay, as the term quantitative signals a lot. It is a research methodology that investigates a topic using numbers and statistical technique, mostly for deductive inference and theory testing. It assumes the capacity of a study for generalization and replication of the study and findings. A typical order of what you report in your study as follows. So what I want to emphasize here is that you will conduct a literature review to identify knowledge gaps and develop hypotheses, which is relevant to the study variables of your interest. And I think the reporting structure across many other quantitative studies will be very similar or identical. Okay, here's an example of a quantitative study recently published in Academic Medicine Journal. And with those tiny print, please just scan the abstract portion of the article that I am sharing with you. So the authors investigated the relationship among study variables on residents and fellows using multivariable regression analysis method here. They used a random and big sample, did statistical analysis to test the hypothesis and make inferences. This suggests and justify future actions about the study variables in a context. But interestingly, in fact, they also employed a qualitative research method a little bit to support the research findings. But we'll discuss the value of mixed method research approach later at this. And I will share these slides with you, so you don't have to take notes or search for the journal article. Okay, something to consider when you are conducting a quantitative research study. Slide is not showing everything well. Sorry about that. So when you design a quantitative research study, please consider addressing these topics: the purpose of the study, who the participants are, what variables you are interested in investigating, how you will conduct a quantitative study, things that you want to design. When you're reading a quantitative research article, make sure that the authors have clearly identified these elements. We'll move on to the qualitative research design brief. For us to write a problem statement and research questions, understanding these different research methodologies is very important. But I am trying to be brief about what we covered here. Okay. So please again, we are reviewing these topics from 10,000 feet view so that we can have a sense of which methodology we should consider first and move on to the stage of writing of statements, that problem statements and research questions. So what about qualitative research? You see purpose and assumption and reporting structure similar to previous slides. So the aim of a qualitative research is to understand a phenomenon, people, an organization around you, whereas a quantitative study tests theory. So the generalization of the findings of the qualitative research is not as important. Instead, qualitative researchers focus on individual meaning in a context and embrace the complexity of the phenomenon of the interest. You may have noticed the similarity of the reporting structure compared to quantitative research. However, qualitative research tradition allows more flexibility in how a study should be designed, conducted, and reported to reflect on the complexity of the topic of the interest. For example, research questions may evolve as you conduct interviews with the study participants or observe the study site. Instead, quantitative research, you don't change your hypothesis in the middle of collecting data, because it is about testing a hypothesis or theory. Okay, here is an example of qualitative research where the authors aim to better understand the impact of patient mistreatment by patient on medical students. Just a moment to go over that abstract. To give you a sense of what it looks like of a qualitative research study. So here the authors interviewed 14 medical students, learn about their experiences of mistreatment by patients and reported the reasons, types, student responses, their coping mechanisms, and impact of such mistreatment by patient. So in a qualitative study, the researcher becomes an instrument to see, feel, share study participants' experiences to better understand the phenomenon. So the findings of such studies provide in-depth description of a phenomenon and people, help readers vividly experience the problem in the context, thus promoting and suggesting changes in curriculum, policy, and culture. It's the value of qualitative research study. So things you need to consider. You may need to convince your research team members and the potential audience of the study, because some people are not familiar with qualitative research compared to quantitative approaches. Moreover, justify all your methodological choices, the theory, selection, data collection, and analysis method based on the previous research about the research topic and literature in general. Since the researcher plays the most important role in qualitative research, reflecting on the role, background, experience, and perspectives of the researcher is critical. All these factors influence how the researcher perceives a phenomenon, design and conducts a study, and interpret the data and findings of the study. So you will describe such reflection in a subsection called researcher subjectivity or reflexivity in the method section of your proposal. Okay. We have covered two well-known research methodologies. Relatively more recently, mixed method research has been spotlighted by many social science researchers who want to examine a problem more comprehensively and more holistically. So let's go over that. As the term mixed method refers, researchers using this methodology involve both quantitative and qualitative research methods. If you're aiming to understand a phenomenon or people's perception from multiple perspectives, a mixed method research is an excellent choice. One caveat is that it will take more time and effort to design and complete a mixed method research, but the reward is huge. There are several approaches to mixed method research. For example, first, you can collect both quantitative and qualitative data to compare or relate the data at the same time. This is called a convergent parallel mixed method approach. Second, you can choose to conduct a survey first to get a big picture of it. For example, student perception on curriculum, and then meet with a few of those study participants to ask their views. This is called an explanatory sequential mixed method approach. Lastly, suppose you are developing a survey instrument. You can choose to interview experts to develop a survey and survey items, which is the qualitative portion. Then you administer the survey to collect quantitative data next. This type of mixed method research is called an exploratory sequential mixed method approach. Okay. But going over all the details about how they're different and examples of such methodologies and methods will take a long time. So it'll be for next time. But I'll give you an example of the mixed method research here. So let's see how authors use the approach. Their choice is the convergent parallel mixed method to me, where both types of data are collected simultaneously and integrated during data analysis. They administered a survey to see the impact of coaching on faculty learning, relationships, and professional identity formation, perhaps the residents, followed by semi-structured interviews. And they report the themes of the interview findings and statistical significance of the difference in the effect of coaching on faculty career growth, thus confirming the effect of the coaching intervention as a study variable. As we see from these examples of studies, the chance of getting holistic understanding of a topic or problem is higher when you employ more than one research approaches. What are the considerations of mixed method research? Depending on the audiences of your study, you may want to help them understand the methodological choices, because many of them are not familiar with mixed method research design. Planning for all these activities according to the different study phases and visualizing the research process will help you, your audiences understand the design of your study better. Visualization will work. Okay. Oof, lots of contents to cover. So far, we have covered many topics, different research methodology choices, research design components, and the definition characteristics and examples of different research methodologies. So why don't we spend a few minutes to brainstorm about your study design components. Here are 3 questions relevant to the different types of research methodologies. So spend some time on it. From now on, we will be engaged in the learning process more actively. And we'll learn about and do more exercise on how to write the introduction, problem statement, research questions in quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. Stay with me till the end of the workshop. Okay, introduction is really important. Cannot emphasize more of the importance and significance of the introduction section of your study. Okay, there are many models that you can take to introduction of your study for your audience, but the deficiencies model of introduction works very well. I love the approach. So here's a problem in practice, or we have a problem in problem-based learning, and state the research problem. And you start reviewing the literature to identify the gap in the literature and look for studies that have addressed the problem. But eventually you will identify deficiencies in the literature. And also you can argue the significance of the problem and the need for the research. And finally, you state the purpose statement. So it's like a funneling, starting with the big problem and then see how scholars have addressed the problem. So there's a gap in the literature and explain why conducting a research study on that topic or the gap is important. So therefore, the aim of the study is something. So that's the flow. So you may not have time to fully reflect on and work on this flow using the deficiencies model, but I have prepared the exercise slides that you can utilize. So basically you state, maybe I shouldn't repeat. So starting from stating the research problem and then stating the purpose statement. And in between there are things that you need to do. to shape your research more effectively. Okay, then let's move on to the purpose statement. What's the purpose of the purpose statement? It sets the objective, the intent, major idea of a proposal or a study. This idea builds on the problem and is refined into specific research questions. And please consider the contained central phenomenon, participants, and research site. Please know that the purpose statement is different from research question and research. The problem statement. Okay. So here are some examples of quantitative purpose statement. The upper one is a script that you can use in your study. Bottom one is an actual example. So the purpose of this study was to examine the relationship between variables, educators, correctional institutions. So it has what's the study, whether it's experiment or survey, identification of the variables, and participant and research site. Quite simple, but it takes some time to write your purpose statement. Okay, what about qualitative purpose statement? Again, upper one is the script, bottom one is an example. So CHOP, co-director of the professional development PLR, I am conducting, my group is conducting a case study to understand the impact of CHOP programming on our learners at SIU School of Medicine. So you can see which components are included in a purpose statement. What about mixed method purpose statement? It's more complex because it is mixed method study. So the mixed method purpose statement contains the overall intent, information about both the quantitative and qualitative strands of the study, rationale of incorporating both strands to study research problem. Can be a script that you can consider using in your study. There are some examples too. Overall intent comes first stage. Second stage, using both qualitative and quantitative. Okay. And later on, please do some exercise on writing these purpose statements. Your goal today was to write a purpose statement. Now is the time that do it. I really wanted to do it together and provide some feedback to each other, but this kind of hybrid format is quite challenging to accomplish that goal. So please understand, but my door is always open, so you and I can exercise together. Okay, research questions. So the purpose statement established the central intent of the study. The next would be the research questions or hypothesis in quantitative research that narrow the purpose statement to predictions about what will be learned or questions to be answered in the study. Okay. Here are things you need to consider in quantitative research questions. three possibilities. Either first, you want to compare groups on the effect of independent variable on a dependent variable, new intervention in education and student performance. Or you want to relate one or more independent variables to one or more dependent variables. Social support, career coaching, people's performance or satisfaction, wellness, kind of thing. We're describing responses to the independent variables and dependent variables. We'll see examples for that. Okay. Let's go over those examples. So first one is an inferential question relating to independent variable and dependent variable. Second question is an inferential question relating critical thinking times, grades, and student achievement, more complex case. Next one is an inferential question relating dependent variable, controlling for the effect of the control variable. Fourth one is a descriptive question focused on the independent variable. So in quantitative research questions, you should consider those different types. And then the next slide, I prepared a script. Developing your research question in a quantitative research question. So see those outcomes as dependent variable, theory, variables, different type of variables, and participants. Those are elements of your research questions. So what about qualitative research questions? So those are completely different quantitative research. The central question is in a qualitative research is a broad question that asks for exploration of the central phenomenon or concept in a study. So ask yourself, what is the broadest questions that I can ask in the study? Otherwise, you will be asking too many detailed questions. So the intent of a qualitative study is to explore the general complex set of factors surrounding the central phenomenon and present the broad and varied perspectives of meaning that participants can hold. And then once you have central question, then you start asking sub-questions to narrow the focus of the study. And then most of the time, those sub-questions become target questions or guidance for observation or document analysis. Relate the central question to the specific qualitative strategy of inquiry. So for example, phenomenological study, which is about understanding a specific phenomenon and describe the phenomenon. The study will ask a question. What is it like for a mother to live with a teenage child who is dying of cancer? So there are different types of qualitative research. In a grounded theory study, which is about developing a theory through qualitative research based on participant experiences and perspectives, the questions may be directed toward generating a theory of some process, such as the exploration of the process as to how caregivers and patients interact in a hospital setting, developing a theory about that topic, hospital context. In a case study, the questions may address description of the case and the themes that emerge from studying it. So regarding a same topic, different qualitative research methodologies will have different research questions. So here are some examples of case study examples. Research question examples. Okay. So how do women in psychology doctoral program describe their decision to return to school, description of their experiences, how that return to school changed their lives? There's a huge difference between qualitative research questions and quantitative research questions. Here's a script that you may consider using in developing your own study. And these scripts are from a popular research methodology book written by Creswell, which is listed in the reference section. You focus on the type of research study, whether it's phenomenological study or a case study or grounded theory, mention about the central phenomenon and participants and type. Then your research questions will be very nice. What about mixed method research question? You may need to include why and explain why you are mixing both quantitative and qualitative research approaches. As I mentioned before, there's a need of educating your potential audiences about mixed method research. Okay? And according to the order of the research that you're conducting, for example, if you're conducting a quantitative part first and then move on to the qualitative part, the order of the research questions will follow that order. Some examples of mixed method research questions. First one is stated from a procedural perspective of an explanatory multi-phase mixed method study, which is about doing the quant part first, conducting a survey, and then meeting with those participants to interview and understand why they have answer in a way. The second one is more about integrating both quant and qual data to understand the relationship of those scores and student performance. Okay. What follows is an exercise that I wanted to do with you. So we have covered how to write research questions for quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research. So here's my ask. Please do this exercise. Think about any questions or challenges that you encounter. We can talk about it. So amazingly, this comes to the end of my presentation of what those research methodologies and approaches and options and how we write introduction, purpose statement, and questions. So why don't we spend some time to think about how we should write those statements and questions. Stop recording our session. For attention and participation.